Let's talk about our shader for fall-based trees. So I want to make sure that I have a variety of different colors for this tree, as well as I wanted to keep that subsurface scattering. And one thing that this also does is it does have a bit of a gradient from the bottom going up to the top as far as how bright the color of the tree is going to be. And just to break up the monotony of the leaves a little bit more. So as you can see, it's a little bit more brown on the bottom and then a little bit more orange on top. So I'm going to show you our shader here. And it is, in many ways, up to, let's just ignore this bit. And it's exactly the same as before. We have those maps, the opacity, we've got the wind, and then there's this. Let me explain what we have going on here. And I'm actually going to start off with the top. So this is a gradient that we're going to be using on our trees in order to change the color from the base of the tree going up to the top. Bounding box based 0-1 underscore UVW, okay? This is a function that works for gradients. And so you have your different ways in which you can control the gradients, whether it's going to be in your B channel, which in Unreal is going up. So this is our B channel, also Z. RGB is also XYZ. So B is being divided by a scalar, and this is determining how much of that gradient we have. Now let's see if I can preview this node here. This divide node allows us to see how this gradient is working. So I guess if I start previewing this node, you're not going to be able to see the gradient because it has all the 3 different channels of color. But when we go here and it's just the blue being divided, we're going to be able to see that gradient. But it's not very strong. So if I was to say, let's say I upped this to 2, you could see how the gradient scale increased, but it has a very large fall off as far as its influence. So I'm just going to set this back to 0.5. And then gradient sharpness, I'm going to set this to 0.4. Let's take a look at that. All right, so the gradient sharpness is determining how much of this fall off there is with our gradient. And for our trees, I found a value of -0.1 to actually work well with what I've created. Which doesn't look like much, but it'll look better on the trees. And then we can always change it in our instance as well. All right, so then I have a clamp just to make sure that this stays between a value of 0 and 1 because I don't want anything to really get blown out. And then here, what I've got going on is I have a node called per instance random. And the per instance random node allows us to take something like the foliage tool or the grass tool, like those grass nodes in which we're spawning grass across our terrain, or the foliage section in which we're painting in the foliage. It takes every instance of our trees, and we're able to use that as an alpha to drive the change of color. So I've got 3 different colors here that are some more, fall type of colors in what you might see on your trees, and I'm lerping them together with a lerp 3 color. So what this is going to do is it's going to take every instance of our tree and lerp a different color onto them. But then I'm taking the result here and I am multiplying by a brightness parameter of -3, and I'm combining that with our gradient. So that way our gradient is going to be darker near the bottom, or where there's the black on our gradient. That's going to be a darker color than the base that it's going to be painted on otherwise. Then after the gradient gets its color, it gets lerped, with the alpha being the blend, the normal color going into B, the darker color going into A, multiply that in with our blend screen, And the blend screen is just our leaves with the color, and the leaves are just getting blended in with the per instance color, and then combine that all together, and that's going into base color. Now I'm not using our gradient for the subsurface. I just decided to go with our base color, blend screen that in with whatever per instance color it's getting, and then put that into the subsurface scattering as well. So, short recap: gradient, random color, brightness, lerp together, times by the color, put into the output. So, let me go ahead and show you how this ends up looking in our scene. So I'm just going to open up a editor for one of the trees that I have here, and that has this material on it. So you can see the brightness affecting the bottom of the tree as opposed to the top, as well as getting that random color. So let me go ahead and go to our scene, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint in a few trees. So let's go under our foliage, check off that, turn on this tree here, and I'm just going to change the scale because it looks better this way anyway. Alright, and then as soon as I let go of the left click, I am going to get all of this different variety of our trees here. And they have some LODs set up as well, so as we get further and further away, they're going to fade out. So I'm going to go through my trees, and I'm going to go ahead and set up a few LODs and maybe make a couple variations of this where I just change out the leaves with another texture and add in a couple different variety of trees so that we can get a little bit more of a convincing forest. But that's all the technical stuff that I'm going to be really going over for this section. Next, I think I'm just going to start working on decorating our scene here and turning it into really a piece that you would put in a portfolio or something that you would share with people. And then after that, we're going to go into our advanced section, and there we'll focus more on some ways to optimize your landscape and some cool tools on how to really bring something to the next level when it comes to realism.